Hello. Let's introduce your assignment today, shall we? So we're starting our Revolutionary War unit, and we're looking at this first chapter. We're looking at the causes of the Revolutionary War, what things built up to it. So last chapter we talked about the French and Indian War, and that was one of the early causes. The aftermath of that war started the first really bad tension between Great Britain and the American colonies. So Britain had fought this war in America and in Europe. Americans had helped Britain fight it here in America, and the war is costly. So because of the debts that England had built up after the war with France, we call it the French and Indian War, they expected the colonists to chip in to help pay for it by paying taxes. And that makes sense, right? But here's the deal. England was supposed to have given American colonists all the same rights that they would have if they lived in England. But they didn't give them those rights. And this is going to just start snowballing as we go along. America was, for instance, supposed to have representatives in Parliament, the English government, to go and represent them in government and be their voice. They were never allowed to have that. So that started this, that put up this wall between the colonies and the King of England, so that anytime the king tried to enforce new laws or taxes or anything like that, the colonists started to resist and say, wait a minute, you can't do that to us because you're not giving us our full rights as citizens of Great Britain. So that's the overall cause, right, of the revolution. But there's a whole lot of a series of events that built on each other on a timeline, starting with the French and Indian War and the aftermath of that war, where the colonists started to feel united a little bit for the first time because of the war being fought in their backyard. Before the French and Indian War, there was no talk of unity between New York and Georgia and Massachusetts and Virginia and all of that. French and Indian War started that thought process a little bit. Maybe we should try to stick together. And then every time from that point on, the King of England tried to do anything to control the colonies. They resisted a little bit. There was some pushback. New taxes, no taxation without representation. So that's what we're putting on this timeline today in this activity. We're going to group these events on our timeline in three categories, and you're going to color code them. You have taxes. There's a lot of those. So those will be one color. You'll color in the events when you do this assignment in your timeline thing. The events that were taxes are yellow. And then there are human rights violations, things that the king tried to do to control the colonies, tighten control over them, that they said he didn't have the right to do because he wasn't giving them their rights. Those were human rights violations. And then there's another group of causes of the Revolutionary War where the colonies and the colonists struck back, did things like protesting and sometimes vandalism or destroying property of some sort. So those would be colonist reactions. So taxes go in yellow. The human rights violations, as the colonists would have seen it, go blue, and then the colonists' reactions go red on that timeline. That'll make more sense when you open that document. But that's what we're doing today. We're just kind of putting this timeline together. We're not going to go into great depth about any one cause today. We're just kind of putting them on the timeline so you can be familiar with them, get your first touches with them, and experience them a little bit. And then as we go along, we will go much deeper into some of those and explain them and teach them and experience them a lot more in depth. So follow the directions carefully. All the directions are spelled out in detail for you. on this assignment. You'll be uploading 2 documents. You'll be uploading the initial timeline data that you'll have to get out of the textbook, and then you're going to upload the actual timeline with the color-coded events. So it's all part of the same activity, but there's 2 documents, and you'll take shots of those screenshots and submit those back to Canvas. Anytime you have left at the end of class, if you do have some time left, get your grades caught up. You've got midterms coming up next week, and a lot of you are missing some assignments, so we all know that. So use those minutes at the end of the class, if you have extra ones, to try to catch up on some of that. Be good.